A very happy new year and a warm welcome to Brand Equity in 2023 with me, Sonali Krishna. As we embark on this new year, I thought it was apt to set the tone for the show in 2023. So what better way than to do a SWOT analysis at the very beginning? At Brand Equity, we like to say it as it is. And this week, we're in luck. 4 industry veterans join us to speak their minds about what's right, what's wrong, what ought to remain, and what needs to be weeded out. These gentlemen have had long-spanning and successful careers, and as they bid adieu to the industry to pursue greener pastures, I thought it was time to sit them down and have a reflective conversation filled with candor in true Brand Equity style. So without further ado, let me introduce to you my illustrious panel. First up, we have veteran marketers Karthi Marshan and Ajay Kakar, media heavyweight Ashish Bhasin, and the creative bigwig Sumanto Chattopadhyay. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me right here on Brand Equity. And first up, a very happy new year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
And you as well, Sonali.
I'll start with you, Ajay. Long spanning career, very successful innings. If I had to ask you to look at the time you spent in your career and juxtapose it with what lies in the future, what would you say would be the stark differences?
Sonali, let me just remind myself that it's been, many years in this industry. But if I pull back and ask myself, looking backwards, which industry do I represent? I'm not sure after all these years, which is approximately 30 odd years, 15 that side of the table, 15 this side of the table, I can answer the question. So I think the biggest thing I would love to leave behind as I get into this year is to be able to have a definition for which industry I represent rather than a question mark. In the past, I remember we used to be called an advertising industry. Today, we are still called an advertising industry. In the past, there was a term I loved, which was called brand custodian. But what happened over the years was the contributors to a brand kept increasing, right? It used to be TV, print, outdoors, digital. Under digital, you had 100 fragments, and then media got carved out. You have so many contributors that the industry has got fragmented, and the people on the screen may not have one common descriptor for who do we represent. So when the two sides of the same coin meet a new person, what do we want to introduce ourselves as? So the first and most foremost, I would love us to go forward and have a role definition. I put my hands up for brand custodian, but open for anyone else. The second part as an offshoot is, so what do we deliver? If Ashish as a media heavyweight is supposed to deliver something which he knows best, the fact is he's much more than media, as is everyone on the screen. So with the fragmentation, we now don't even know what we individually or collectively contribute. The regrettable part is that you put 3 of us on the same panel and ask us, what is the definition of our deliverable? We may all have different answers to that ourselves. So that's the second one. And the third and the last, I think most important looking forward, something we've spoken about years, is what are our metrics of success? When you ask me the temperature, I'll tell you degrees centigrade or degrees Fahrenheit. When you ask me my weight, I'll ask you pounds or kilos. When you ask the deliverable of this industry, question remains, and I hope it doesn't in this coming year.
Wow. Very articulately put. That's why I love this panel. I know it's a very bold panel. I'll pass it to you, Ashish, as a different take, or maybe the same in terms of, the years you've spent vis-a-vis the future.
Look, I've spent 35 years in the advertising industry, and I see myself very much a part of the advertising industry. Having said that, this is an industry that is completely evolving, and the only guarantee I can give you is that if we're talking 3 or 5 years later, it would have totally evolved from where we are today. It's an industry which is today in transition. It's very clear to me that the way things are today is not the way that they're going to be in the future. There are some radical changes that are happening, and we're actually in the cusp of that transition. But also, the importance of advertising doesn't decrease. The importance of advertising actually increases. Its shape and form And like Ajay said, deliverables are definitely undergoing a change and will be very different a few years from now as they are from today. But what will remain at the heart of it is that it is advertising. It was there 2000 years ago. It is there today and will certainly be there many, many generations after everybody on this screen is gone. And I can tell you this, I don't see myself leaving the industry. I see myself transitioning to a different role from let's say from an opening batsman to a coach's role in a game which has gone from test cricket to T20. So the game is transitioning, maybe our roles are transitioning, but I don't think the essentially what we're doing is changing, but it's going to look very different. Therefore, the skill sets required are going to be very different. The winners and losers are going to be very different. And many of the people who you see today are actually may not even exist a few years from now. So that's the interesting bit of this industry. It's always evolved and it's now at the cusp of another evolution.
Sumanto, I'll get the creative perspective. Are you like breathing a sigh of relief that you're at least for now done with the classical advertising format, working for an ad agency, being the head of an agency in these very confusing times?
No, you're right. They have been very confusing times, and I think that, in fact, I think I should ask my question to Ajay, because not only because I worked with Ajay quite closely many years ago, but because of his 15 years on the other side of the fence, which is that, I know we like to whine in the advertising, WHINE in agency, but why are we so poorly paid? And as a result, we're not able to offer the quality of life to ourselves or to our juniors. Why is it? Why is it that we can't come together as an industry and ask for a better deal from our clients?
Ask both marketers, Karthi
Okay,
and
I
Ajay.
asked all of them. I just wanted to ask Ajay because he's my old friend. But yes,
I'm happy to take the Sumanto. I have sought billings and I have signed off on billings. I think it's a vicious circle, if you ask me. And having worn both hats, I will put my hand on my heart and tell you it's a vicious circle. I have spoken and heard about that old saying of pay peanuts and get monkeys. And I've also spoken or heard the other side talking about it's a commodity now. There are many in the fray. What is it that you bring to the party? I think who will bell the cat or who will invest first is a question we've had for many years. If you ask me, I would start by saying is that, what do you deliver? Coming back to that, Sumanto, what do you want to be paid for? If you stand as an ideas industry, you deserve to be paid ideas. Worth. And you know what that is, right? When you patent an idea and when you invest in an idea, what it's worth. If you are seen as an ad campaign industry, a PR industry, a digital industry, PR may want to pay you by the next story that you get or don't get from me, which is no way a respect to that industry and what it represents. So while I can't answer this question for the industry at large, that what is our deliverable? I told you that's a need. How should we therefore be paid? I again want to raise my hand and ask a question. Does an agency partner know what are my KRAs? What is remunerating me? And if you know my KRAs and you take it off my chest or shoulder me on that deliverable, you should be part of the spoils. If you help me see tomorrow today, if you help me deliver on my brands tomorrow today, I think you have to be a co-beneficiary of what I benefit as a marketer or my company benefits as a brand.
Let me take a shot.
I actually want to respond to Sumanto. Sumanto, we get paid what we deserve. And I have always been on this side of the fence, which is I've always been an agency person for 35 years. And this is true for every industry, by the way. Nobody does charity to anyone in business. And equally, nobody can underpay anybody in business because it's, what you deliver, what you command. I think there is one place where we have gone wrong as on the advertising side, which we need to, and picking up from what Ajay is saying on that, and that is that we have totally underinvested in talent. If you see the people that we had 35 years ago when I joined advertising, or even 20 years ago, and that's true, by the way, even on the client side, the quality of people that you had both on the agency side and client side, there's a sea change. The best talent is not coming into the advertising industries. It's very easy to say because we don't get paid enough, so we don't pay people enough, so the right people are not coming, and you pay peanuts and you get monkeys and all that nonsense. But the fact is that people are able to provide consultancy at a huge cost. So we haven't kept pace. Like, we haven't in many places done what we should have been doing to command that premium. And unless we don't look inwards, if we keep blaming the system and keep blaming the clients, this is never going to change. So it is a fact that people in advertising are underpaid at the junior and middle levels. It is not true at the higher levels. They are actually very well paid and reasonably standardized even to global levels. And I can confirm that, having run 17 or 18 countries on that relative sense, it's not badly paid. But yes, we are not paying well enough at the junior and middle levels, therefore not attracting the right talent, and that problem is there. And the reason is we're not adding enough value for Karthi or Ajay to say, okay, here, look, I really value you guys. I'll get scared if you go away. I'm going to pay you more, right? So I think that's the thing that we have to introspect and also look at. And a few other things will come into it, but I'm sorry I interrupted Karthi. I think I should hand it to
I
him.
was
Yes, Karthi.
going to perhaps vehemently agree with the two of you, but I like to put it slightly differently. I think we are to blame. And when I say we, I'm saying being on the side of the advertising industry, we are to blame for two things, in my view. One, we don't buy our own snake oil. We've been selling differentiation and positioning to our clients till the cows come home. But when we go to pitch, what is there to differentiate us? And it finally comes down to the price, right? It comes down to L1. Now, if the client can choose L1, that means we haven't done our job in differentiating enough. The client shouldn't care about L1. Problem number two, in price, we continue to work with what is actually a dinosaur of our industry, which is commission. If we want, and no matter how we reframe it today, we say retainers and fees and so on. The truth is, I have looked into the eyes of the negotiators on both sides of the table, and I always see they're quickly crunching whatever the fee is, how much does it turn into as commission percentage. Now, if you're going to be stuck as a commission earner, you are essentially a broker. Nobody will ever respect a broker. The point Ajay is making about consulting firms, like whether it's the Deloitte, the McKinsey's or whatever, also eating our lunch, coming in and giving 2 months worth of brand input in some form or the other and charging multiple crores for it. Why are they able to do it? Because of the positioning of their industry. We have not positioned our industry correctly. We have continued to carry the age-old yoke of being an agent, a commission agent. We have to find ways to reposition ourselves and shake that off. Only then will we get to what is fair worth. In spite of what Ajay's Ashish is saying about the fact that we are well paid at the middle and higher levels, perhaps. But I think we can be paid even more fairly, and everyone can still be happy. That's what
Am I allowed to add one?
Sure. I just want to understand, Karthi, is he talking about marketers or is he talking about the agency folk?
Well, I was responding to Sumanto's question, but marketers are also on a relative basis, especially in the industry Ajay and I represent, relatively very poorly paid, because we are seen as the last mile baton carriers. We are not seen as drivers. We rarely get a seat at the big table, and we have had to fight tooth and nail to get it. Both Ajay and I have, and I know a bunch of our colleagues who've lasted long enough have made it, but it's been a fight. So both about the respect and the money, it's hard to come by. Unlike in, say, CPG perhaps, or in some other industries where marketing is seen as a driver function.
Sure.
So, Sumanta, looking at you and all of us on this panel, I do think I want to share with you a thought. Very often we believe or forget what we do for our clients that we can and should do for ourselves. So, for example, brands we know command a premium versus commodities. They don't demand a premium. And therefore, if we are a brand individually, collectively, then we must command a premium. And the true test of which is, and I say it as a client and a person who's been the other side, who has practiced it, walk out of a client account, irrespective of the top line, if it doesn't give you the bottom line you want. If you do that, you will earn the respect. If all of us do that, the industry will earn respect. We have to create a brand for ourselves. And the minute we go the way Karthi is talking about, the commodity way, which is the L1 way, then we are doing disservice to ourselves. And I cannot blame the industry. Therefore, I'm saying is, if even an agency does that to a client, to the next client or the third client, that agency will stand out of the clutter, and only those who value brands will go to that agency.
Right.
Sumanto, lots has been put to you, and lots of this has been actually discussed in the past, whether, agencies have the bravado to do that. You've spent several years in India's and leading agency. Is it really possible? And if it is possible, your agency should have been the first to be able to do it, to walk that talk. So
there are two things. One is, to what Ajay is saying. I mean, I can think of a number of times where we had walked out when we felt that we were not being fairly remunerated. So that does happen. In fact, that's happened many times. Even in my last stint, it happened a number of times because people, they just don't want to pay. And, there'd always be, and it was always about, undercutting and whoever offered the lowest price. So it's again that I'm hearing this term L1 for the first time, but I'm quite taken. So that's there. I just a sort of a question to Karthi about this commission thing, because, I always think about the commission era as being the golden era, where as long as your idea worked, you kept on getting paid for it. And that, versus being paid today for the number of hours and the number of people working on it, you actually, in a way, got paid for the value of the idea. And I know that, again, Ajay said that, what are we selling? But as a creative person, to me, it's always been the idea at the heart of things. And I felt that the earlier model, we did get fairly remunerated for the idea, and which doesn't happen anymore. And I know that things have changed, and earlier on, the same ad would run for years, and that rarely happens today. But what do you feel about the old model?
Thank you, Sumanto. That's a full toss to me, and I'm going to take it, though I think we've hijacked Sonali's agenda completely today.
Maybe that's true.
Go
ahead.
Session.
She got me on this panel to hijack it. So
right. No. So, Sumanto, I've written about this in some other place in response to something Madhukar said many years ago, actually. So my view about commission is exactly this, that you are a commodity if you want commission. It may end up giving you endless windfall if the same piece of work is running forever, but a client will resent that, because after the first 10 crores of advertising, what value are you adding that you should get another 15% on the next 90 crores just because I happen to be using it? Now, there is an IP issue, which is fair. As a royalty concept, if you wanted to get money as long as the damn thing is running, that's a fair concept. However, the problem with IP is that in this case, it's commissioned work, right? We are paying you to do the work in the first place. Unlike, say, a Hussein or a Picasso, who's spending decades in his attic, struggling, and he's putting his own capital. He's giving of his own blood and sweat for decades together. Suddenly, they are an overnight success, and then they command royalty and IP, which is immeasurable. But you guys aren't in that business, right? Or we aren't in advertising. We aren't in that business. We want to get paid for our time. We also want royalty and commission. Now, that seems excessive, and that seems unfair from a client's perspective.
Not really, Karthi, because it's not really, because while, yes, it is true that the client commissions you to do work, he commissions you to do work for a brand, for a particular period, for a, let's say, a particular campaign, but it's unfair that that gets used repeatedly with absolutely no remuneration. So we are not tradesmen who are hired to deliver something for which you are paid for. And I think that's where the industry has gone wrong. And just to twist it a bit, the solution, we are to blame for it. The advertising industry is to blame for it. And just like I said, people was one big issue. The other very big issue is that we have not invested in IT, in technology at all. Agencies have been very poor investors in technology. Which are the largest advertising businesses today in the world? These are platforms. It's Google, it's Facebook. They build hundreds of billions of dollars worth of business because they build platforms. And the future of advertising is going to be platform-based, which is going to be technology-based. Yes, will creative be important? Of course it will be. Yes, will media be important? Of course it will be. Everything will be important. But the moment You have invested in technology, which none of the agencies have done. We've only created front-end systems, which are basically Excel sheets or some other art-based kind of stuff to show off. The moment you have created platforms and clients are working on that platforms, this whole thing of IP goes away, because every time you use my platform, you're going to have to pay me. And I feel the next transition of advertising is going to be that there are going to be platforms. In fact, that's what I'm working on. There is no way we will keep debating this 20 years from today and we'll have the same things being thrown. I have been debating this, in fact, even on one of Sonali's programs, I remember 10 years ago or something like that. And very similar issues were coming up. Same thing will happen 10 or 15 years later. The game changer in this is going to be technology. The moment I have my platform, let's say you are on Rebate, a platform I have created, and from beginning to end, whether it is creative or it is data and analytics, or it's where to get your consumer, or it is actually activating it on Google, Facebook, because the world is going digital. 60% of the global advertising is digital. If you are on my platform, you're going to have to pay me a platform fees. And that's what Google is doing. That's what Facebook is doing. And I think that's what agencies need to do. And we are paying for underinvestment in technology.
Yeah, great point. Let me take a cue from you there. This entire, thrust on digital and apps and technology and all of that. If I ask you, but maybe I'll start with you, Sumanto, because you've been asking all the questions and, taking away my job. So, in this super specialized world, which we have become, right? Are you finding, let's take a look at your career. Without, let's say, the last 5-6 years where technology has become so big and we have buzzwords every day, and look at the future and how it will evolve. Do you think advertising has lost its effectiveness completely because of this super specialization, because of so much of tech and fragmentation, vis-a-vis, let's say, the golden ads, which I remember, I can still, even if there's a tune, I can still remember the dialogue, I can remember, the jingle and all of that. But today you ask me for one memorable ad, I really have to search and look and then put together the top 10 ads of 2022. It's tough. Nothing stands out.
Yeah, I've been seeing I saw a nice ad today by Enormous, and it was, anyway, sorry to, no, I think that, as somebody mentioned, we are in that phase of transition. It's like what always happens, when people move from print to radio, the medium was the message. And then when you went from radio to TV, suddenly the medium itself took all the importance. But once, things set, and of course, the rate of change today is much faster than what we'd ever seen in those before 5 years from now. But I think that the dust will settle, and as the dust settles, it's going to be a marriage of creativity with the technology and the data. And we are going to see, we have seen, I think that if you look at not just a Cadbury's ad with Shah Rukh Khan, it was a brilliant first of all, it was mainstream. It won big awards, but it wasn't one of those niche things which won big awards. It was a mainstream thing which used data and AI in a brilliant way, married with creativity. And I think that, so the form that creativity is taking is different, and it's going to keep changing. But I think that's an example which I just mentioned of how things are going to be in the times to come. So I think that creativity is always going to be at the heart of it, and it just has to utilize whatever the latest technologies are and move forward. And I think that's what we are doing. But because we're in this transitional phase, it's very confusing and people don't know.
But Shumo, we've been in this transition phase now for at least 5-6 years, right? Yeah. Digital is no more a new thing. My point is, you've had enough people on this panel talk about how the advertising folks need to internalize, position themselves better, stand up for themselves, gain their respect back. What is your feedback to marketers?
So,
in terms of their worst practices, come on, you can do it.
No, I'm not sure what you're asking me to say. I think that we are a fragmented industry today. We've got the dinosaur agency people like me from the traditional agencies, and we've got the so-called digital agencies. And I think that all of them have to meet, and they have to come to a certain level, and where all of them are able to understand the other side of things. Big agencies like the one which I came from, we're not the best. We've not been the champions of digital, though, we have made a huge effort and we've moved the needle to a great extent. And the digital agencies don't get brand. Ajay Kakar was talking about brand custodians. So some of the younger digital native agencies don't, they don't get the thing about being a brand custodian. So I think the two halves have to come together, and yeah, maybe it's taking a long time, but I think it's happening. It's slowly happening. And there are those brilliant examples like the one that I mentioned for Cadbury's, which show a complete amalgamation of all the different disciplines. And it shows a level of creativity and a level of advertising, which is up there with the best in the classical period, as you were talking about.
Sonali, let me rescue Sumanto and do a self marketing.
Oh, thank you.
I can take the gloves off for us as well.
Yeah.
I think we're going through what is, I think, probably the nadir of the transition. This is the worst time that I have seen the last few years, where 5x of what we spend on brand is being spent on performance advertising. And performance advertising isn't advertising, it is sales. And it is literally almost exactly like sending one sweaty boy who earns 10,000 rupees knocking on doors trying to sell something. It is exactly that, because there is no brand, there is no seduction, there is no drama, there is no emotion in any of performance advertising, and yet it is getting 4 out of 5 advertising dollars. And both agencies, well, not the typical creative agencies, obviously, but the agencies who are willing to do this with clients and also selling them the snake oil that this is great and this is going to work for you, and the clients who are buying it, they are both being ridiculously stupid. We are hurting ourselves, we're hurting our brand, because we all know that the click-through rates on most of these things are like 1/3 or 1%. After click-through, conversion is 1% of that 1/3 of 1%, which means you're leaving about 10,000 people who have been exposed to your brand in the shabbiest way possible. And for that, you're getting one customer. And that one customer also, you don't know how long you're getting her for, because people are uninstalling every other day and so on and so forth. So in that sense, we are all taken in by, it's literally like once upon a time, or perhaps even now, we used to throw armies of salespeople on the streets and say, go get me sales somehow because I need the money to run my engine. That is the reality. There's no argument about that. But the equivalent of that on digital now is that we are, with every time that we are spamming you, abusing you, exposing you to some really shabby looking work, we are hurting the brand. And no one's owning up to that because hum sab mile hue hain isme.
Yeah.
So, Sonali, can I add to the introspection and self-bashing, if I may so call it? I think if you ask me to sum it up, both sides, I think this transition Ashish is speaking about will and continue to happen till we address one single problem: identity crisis. Who are we? Now I'm looking at the agency side and I'm asking them, who are you? If you say you're an ad agency, an ad cues advertising. If you say you're a digital agency, you're only looking at digital. PR agency, DM, you know what I'm saying. Therefore, what are you contributing in my life as a marketer? I have no idea. If you're going to say I got more clicks, if you're saying I got more likes, if I got more shares, what does that do to my business? So the identity crisis is, you speak ad, PR, DM, digital, and all shades of digital. And I speak number of customers, revenue, profits. Our language is not matching. That's an identity crisis. Within our side, marketers, we have an identity crisis. The fact is, we are flowing with where the tide is taking us rather than pulling in our direction. We have spoken about the new CMO is the chief digital officer. The new CMO is the chief finance officer. The new CMO. First, what does the CMO do? Before we are trying to do what the CDO does or the CFO does, what is the CMO supposed to do? And we have gone with the flow where we have now started raising our hand saying, we also contribute to sales. So marketing has become sales, which we can never be. And what is sales going to do? So can we stay within our definition? Can we be proud and say we create a pull? There is somebody else who creates a push. If I keep it as such simple definitions, and then I staff accordingly, then I show deliverables accordingly, then I charge accordingly, then I'm positioned accordingly. Therefore, I'm summing it up by saying it's a brand identity crisis. And as brand specialists, that should be our baएं हाथ का खेल. To create a brand identity for who we are and what we do, both sides of the table.
Won't you say in terms of gravitas, in terms of stature, you go back in time and you go and look at, the Alec Patamsis and the Mohammad Khans of the world, or even a Piyush Pandey, who can actually sit with the client and say, no, I'm going to do it this way. And this is what, and the client has full faith, as opposed to today where you don't even have access to the top management. And it's really a piecemeal, conversation with procurement and so on and so forth. So the big change has been the big fall from grace for the advertising industry that doesn't seem to hold that stature anymore. Would you agree? Or would you say it's just different times?
I had opportunity to be in the public relations side and the advertising side. And I always felt that advertising guys on their best day met a brand manager, or on the bestest day met a marketing director. And a PR person had access to CEOs and boardrooms. The fact is, can you sit in front of a CEO or a boardroom and discuss their strategy first and then your creative, rather than just present a creative idea and get the client to buy that in? That is the positioning which was powerful and has remained in your and my mind. So we attracted the best talent. We retained the best talent. Those are the stalwarts we yet swear by. Quote David Ogilvy, he said, you should know more about your clients than the client does. And therefore, you start with what we call strategy and end with a creative solution for the brand. Now, if we can do that, now see how people are going to relook at us, how people are going to revalue us. I think that's the brand identity crisis that both sides are facing.
I think it's equally true on the client side for sure. I mean, when I started advertising, and I'm sure Ajay and Karthi at least will, and Sumanto will say that, you worked with people like Shunu Sen, you worked with people like Vindi Banga, you worked with Ajay Khosla, you worked with, Harish Manwani, the top stalwarts today. It's actually embarrassing and humiliating sometimes to be presenting to clients today who you have to explain the basics of, and like earlier it was mentioned, who are only chasing where is the next click through going to come from, to even talk advertising. So it is equally true on both sides. And when I said there is a deterioration in the quality of people, that is not true only for advertising. It is absolutely true on the marketing side. And that's the reason why even the role of the CMO is under question. The CMOs, and always there are exceptions, both on the agency side and on the client side, and two of the exceptions on the client side I can see on the screen itself. But the CMOs themselves, I mean, today are either clueless or are just defending their jobs. They cannot take a risk. The average tenure of a CMO in general now is 18 months to 2 years to 2.5 years. वो बेचारा अपनी नौकरी बचाएगा या कुछ daring काम करेगा, right? So it's getting into, so it's a sort of a downward spiral that both sides of the industry are in. And 5 years later, if we are sitting here and having this conversation, unless we don't do something drastic, I can tell you exactly the same points will be repeated. It's just that we will be older. It's all very, when you're nearing 60, most of us here are, I'm 58. I know Ajay has just completed 60. Karthi is probably a little younger, and Sumanto. But when you're at that age, it's all very well when we look back and say, oh, those were the good old days and life was so nice. When you were in those good old days, it seemed very difficult even at that point in time when you look back and you remember. But when you have high quality people working towards one direction, you were able to achieve miracles. Today, you have poor quality people. You don't know what to communicate to. You don't know whether the other guy on the other side is even understanding. And he doesn't have the guts to even take 1/10 of the risk you're telling. You yourself will not be at your best in that. And that's a problem. We need to resolve this. Otherwise, like somebody said, we are just on a downward spiral.
They're all discussing it in their very narrow silos.
So Sonali, I want to respond slightly differently. All the names that were taken now of the golden boys of marketing or advertising, they are what I like to think about now as the South Bombay take on this industry. The truth is, if you go to the SMEs and the emerging SMEs, and there are not hundreds but thousands of them in this country, there the Lala is giving time of day to the Piyush Pandey equivalent even today. And he's smart, he or she is smart enough to get their money's worth, and they're smart enough to take bold risks. They bet the farm as well. But a lot of that is not visible to us because I think we have the, unfortunately now, the rose-tinted glasses ki hum apna South Bombay hi dekhte hain. We are not looking at what is happening in the real country today, as many people have started to call it Bharat. There's a lot of action happening. There's a lot of courage and there is a lot of risk being taken. In fact, I salute them, and that's what I look forward to as a future in 2023, personally as well as for the industry, that ye sab karne ko milega, because the bigger you are, that is the problem. The Shunu Sens and the levers have all become so big that risk taking becomes more difficult, and then it gets delegated also, and then that young brand manager, like Ashish is saying correctly, usko apni naukri bachani hai. Though agar uska 3 saal ka hi naukri hai na, Ashish, I'm wondering कि उसको क्यों बचानी है, फिर तो रिस्क ले ही सकते हैं ना. He can break everything and leave. क्या फर्क पड़ता है?
I would think so, but it's actually not the brand. वो brand manager की बेचारे की ट्रेनिंग ही नहीं बराबर से हुई, because वो marketing director ने अपनी नौकरी बचानी, CMO ने अपनी नौकरी बचानी है, right? So it's a sort of a last 5-10 years में a cycle, and you're absolutely right about this. See, look at the facts, look at the big numbers. In the next 3 years, 250 to 300 million more people are going to come on the internet. Right? They're not going to come from Bombay, Delhi, Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Chennai, etc. They're going to come from tier 3, tier 4 towns, from rural areas, etc. Communication will have to move regional. It will have to get local in a country like ours if it's going to make this thing. And whether you like it or not, you can say, I remember the jingles of those ads. The great ads can still be created, but your only way of communicating to them will be through a mobile or will be through a screen, because that is all that they are consuming. Right. So
I have 2 points to make to this panel as a customer. Right. One is, I agree with all your points that there has been a massification of talent. Right. So even when I interview people, let's say 10 years ago versus now, they can be entrepreneurs or they can be, these great mover shakers, but the polish is not there. There is a massification. Right. And I'm assuming that will happen as Bharat becomes more inclusive into India, and maybe that's why we're facing it. But your point about, this, we can only view our ads on a mobile, and we can, please, who's interested in seeing an ad? We're just waiting to skip it. We're waiting to shut it. We're waiting to just get through to it, to get to our content. I think this over-complex world of advertising and, different buzz terms we hear, I think it's just the marketing fraternity trying to keep themselves relevant. We don't really care whether we don't want to see anything. We'd like to skip it. Of course, we are watching it on TV because we don't have the skip option. But if we had the skip option, we would have skipped it. These banner ads, which have been coming in, are completely inefficient. Everybody is just looking for that cross button, but it's still working. People still believe in it. And maybe you're right, the new age people who are coming and are on top of their companies may not have the experience to think it through. So don't you think somewhere we are overcomplicating just mass communication as an industry?
But I don't think it is mass communication at all. It is now a very personalized one-to-one communication using
yes, but your assumption that I'm interested to be engaged by a brand.
You're not interested because an ad by definition is an intrusion. So either I have to surprise you to be wanted, or I have to have something in it for you, right? I'll give you an example. Housewives in India today are purchasing millions and billions of rupees on games in the afternoon because they're playing game. Now, would you imagine a 45-year-old Savita ji sitting in Meerut buying a 1,500 rupee sari or a 2,000 rupee jewelry piece on a game because an ad over there has got her, because if she clicks on that, more coins come to it. So you may think advertising in one particular way, and unfortunately, all of us are on the wrong side of 40s and 50s. The consumer is between 20s and 30s. So advertising is evolving, keeping pace with the consumer. Advertising agencies and marketeers are not being able to do that, which is why do you think today an agency with 3 bright people in a garage and 2 computers can come up and actually challenge some of the biggest players? I mean, that's another might, that they may not have media might and may not be able to survive media monies, etc. Forget about that, right? Why? Because they are probably closer to the consumer and closer to what the new age consumer is doing than people who are now 50 and 60 and taking decisions, or people like you who are saying, I'm not interested in ad, who watches banner ads, etc. Right? You need to let the younger people take decisions, but you need to make sure that there are great quality people who are taking them, because the consumer is moving there, whether you like it or not. And nobody wants to see advertising. You've got to make them see advertising. That's your job.
These youngsters, these kick-ass people who are doing some great work, and that is true. But I yet want to ask each of them to tell me what their case study includes. What's the deliverable? And the problem is that I think most of us look at campaigns or words that to that effect. What is the impact we have created? And I'm not sure that many of these small kick-ass agencies have created brands. I'm not sure they have created pull. They may have created sparks. They may have created some pull jadis. I'm again coming back to our job is to build brands, whether it's through advertising and all shades, digital, all shades, experiential and all shades. And by experiential, I mean, I'm not, but many people at work now for 12 hours. 12 hours, they're not at work. Where do you cash them? How do you cash them? Other than the sleeping hours, I can cash them at every single point in time. That should be our focus. That is a success story you can talk about, you can own. Otherwise, one great campaign, one great leads, one great click rate, I'm not too sure that's what our industry wants to be known and will be paid for.
Sumanto, pearls of wisdom.
No, I think that in many ways it's much the same as before. We are trying to surprise our consumers, and in today's context, we're trying to stop people like Sonali from not hitting the skip button.
You yourself hit the skip button.
I do, but I don't always do it. When I'm on YouTube, and I'm on YouTube a lot, if there's an ad that's compelling, I actually watch it to the end. And I think that still there are people who are still doing that. And so part of my work as a creative person is to deliver an ad which is creative enough and surprising enough and with a compelling enough message to be able to stop them from skipping.
Karthi, before I let all of you go, there have been, this conversation has taken many directions. But, if I had to ask you what needs to remain in this industry, and we should celebrate it, and what needs to be weeded out, what would you say?
I think what needs to remain is, the good thing is that discerning marketers and conscientious advertising people have always put the customer first. They have always tried to get under the skin of the customer, to represent her, to care about to figure out what she cares about, what makes her tick, and use that meaningfully to the ends of the business. That's the stuff that I think needs to remain. What I think can absolutely get thrown out is the bickering, is this you versus us, and all the jargon. All of that should go away. If you're single-minded about delivering value to the customer in all our roles, I think we will all win. And first, if the customer wins, then the business will win. If the business wins, marketers and advertising agencies will win.
Ashish?
I think what needs to remain are great people. We have very few of them. We need many more of them. What needs to remain is fun. What needs to be added is a lot more dependence upon technology, so that at least mundane jobs get automated, and better use of technology gets us better data. And what needs to be thrown out are lawyers and accountants, and leave advertising to advertising people, leave marketing to marketing people. Those are the guys who know it best. Also, what needs to happen is that we need to become entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, at least in India, very, very few advertising entrepreneurs have developed. Once advertising entrepreneurs start developing, and you start forming billion-dollar companies listed and so on and so forth, automatically great talent, great technology will come.
Okay, Shumo?
Well, I'll just come back to the fact that we need to, I think we
give
need
a punchline, yeah. Shumo, give a punchline.
We need those, we need to bring the good old days back in terms of having fun at work, which we don't have, because, we're just scrambling to make that buck, because, the margins are so thin. So I'm still going back to my wine. We need to find a way to get paid a lot better, so that we can create agencies where youngsters really have fun and want to stay, and not become directors or not join Netflix and leave the advertising industry altogether.
Okay. Ajay, before I close.
I think what we have to retain and never forget is ideas that deliver. As long as we are focused on customer brand and ideas that deliver to bring them together, we are in business. And what we have to get away from is the fragmentation and sub-fragmentation mode that we've all got into.
Absolutely. And I think for somebody who's looked at this industry for a while now, despite the fact that you'll have become a bit stiff and are in suits all the time compared to, let's say, a decade ago, it's still the most fun industry with the most fun people. So that should definitely remain, because that's the charm of marketing and advertising. And I think what should go is definitely that the fact that we discuss age-old issues time and time again, action needs to be taken. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Wishing you a cracker of a new year and hoping for many more solid discussions, which of course is followed up by the industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you.
Happy New Year.